If you travel through Israel today, you'll encounter the most majestic ruins of the ancient world. These sun-bleached stones represent a massive architectural legacy left behind by a man history remembers primarily for his cruelty. This is Herod the Great. He is a historical paradox, a master engineer who reshaped the landscape of Judea, and a bloodthirsty despot who systematically murdered his own family to keep his throne. To understand his brutality, we have to look at the instability of his position. This diagram shows his father, Antipater the Idumean. Because of his Edomite and Arab descent, Herod was an ethnic outsider. He lacked the sacred Jewish bloodline his subjects demanded. His biggest threat came from the Hasmoneans, the descendants of the Maccabees. They were the rightful heirs to the throne and enjoyed the popular support of a public already being crushed by Herod's heavy taxes. Surrounded by internal rivals and holding a fragile claim to power, Herod developed a two-pronged strategy for survival. He would use the sword to silence his enemies and stone to make himself indispensable to his Roman masters. Herod initially tried to legitimize his rule through marriage. He wed Mariamne, a Hasmonean princess, hoping that merging his political power with her royal bloodline would secure his domestic flank. But his paranoia eventually overwhelmed the alliance. Suspicious of anyone who could challenge him, Herod had Mariamne's brother drowned, executed Mariamne herself, and eventually turned his blades on his own sons. His external survival was just as precarious. This map shows the Roman Empire completely overshadowing Judea. Rome was the only power that mattered, but it was currently being torn apart by a volatile civil war. Herod spent his reign swapping allegiances between Roman titans like Mark Antony and Augustus Caesar. He navigated these deadly politics with a single goal, ensuring he was always useful to whoever held the most power in Rome. When Mark Antony gave Herod's best agricultural lands near Jericho to the Egyptian queen Cleopatra, Herod didn't fight back. He chose a quieter path, cleverly arranging to lease his own land back from her to keep his territory intact while avoiding a suicidal war. While the sword kept his rivals at bay, his constant betrayals left him isolated and hated. To truly cement his legacy and control his people, he turned to his ultimate weapon, architecture. Herod used massive construction projects to transform Judea into a strategic asset for the Roman Empire, while simultaneously clamping down on his own populace. His engineering masterpiece was Caesarea Maritima. He built a massive artificial harbor on a coastline where turbulent waves and shifting sands made traditional construction impossible. His engineering succeeded by using a revolutionary hydraulic concrete. This diagram shows the process. A mixture of volcanic ash and lime was lowered into the water in wooden frames. When the mixture hit the seawater, it cured into solid stone blocks beneath the surface. This seaport secured Herod's role in the international grain trade. By controlling this vital shipping point, Herod ensured that Rome's economic interests were directly tied to the stability of his own throne. To appease his Jewish subjects, he rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem on a staggering scale. He followed strict religious laws during construction, hoping these massive blocks would win over the Pharisees and the common people who otherwise despised him. But his most revealing projects were built out in the wilderness. High on a plateau overlooking the Dead Sea, Herod constructed the fortress of Masada and the palace of Herodium. These were impenetrable complexes designed as panic rooms. They were places for a terrified king to hide whenever his paranoia about a popular uprising or a Roman betrayal finally came true. Every stone Herod laid was an attempt to buy security. He was a man desperately trying to engineer a kingdom that was strong enough to survive the hatred of the very people he ruled. By 4 BCE, Herod's health was failing. As he lay dying, his family's internal wars reached a fever pitch, leading him to execute another son, Antipater, just 5 days before he finally passed away. The entire country breathed a sigh of relief when he died, but the political structure he had built was already beginning to crumble. Within a decade, the Romans deposed Herod's son and placed Judea under direct rule. A series of Roman governors took control, but they lacked Herod's ability to balance local religious sensitivities with imperial demands. Over several decades, the situation reached a breaking point. These officials stationed troops in the Holy City, imposed soaring taxes, and ignored Jewish religious requirements. This chronic insensitivity, combined with an economic decline, slowly pushed the population toward total anarchy. In 70 CE, the country finally exploded into a full-scale rebellion. The Romans responded by destroying Herod's glorious temple. In a final tragic irony, the last Jewish rebels fled the burning city to take a final stand at Masada, using Herod's own paranoid fortress to fight the empire he spent his life trying to please. Herod's reign leaves us with a stark historical lesson. You can use hydraulic concrete to build a harbor in the open sea, and you can carve impenetrable fortresses into the desert rock. But those structures are hollow if the people inside them have no reason to be loyal to the man who built them.